My mother funded an impoverished student who impersonated me at school. At the bustling school gate, she got in the car ahead of me and shouted to me in a voice that everyone around could hear. "Chloe, I know we have a good relationship and being too calculative would hurt our feelings. But we're not going the same way. You can't always take my car for granted, relying on our good relationship to let my driver take you home." As soon as these words came out, people around us cast contemptuous looks at me. If it were the past, I would have been flustered and speechless. But unfortunately, I was just reborn. So, in front of everyone, I mercilessly pulled her out of the car and spat on her face as I got in. "You've lived a few good days and you really don't know your place anymore. And your driver, see if he dares to respond when you call his name." The noise of the crowd stopped with my cold words. I glanced at Sarah, whose school uniform was messy and pulled out of the car by me, and didn't say another word. I slammed the car door and ordered the driver to drive. Outside the car, Sarah, who came to her senses, was pounding on the car door, still with that unexplained commanding look, ordering me to open the door. "Miss, this is not good," said the driver, turning his head to look at me, his tone full of difficulty. "Not good?" I sneered. Sarah wanted me to open the door for her. All right, I would fulfill her wish. When she wasn't paying attention, I knocked on the car door lock, and the moment she finally opened the door, I leaned back slightly and kicked the door hard with my foot. Sarah couldn't dodge in time and her head slammed into the door with great force and she was knocked out. "Ah!" Sarah, who fell to the ground, let out a scream. I leaned comfortably against the car door, watching her fall to the ground in a mess, with blood all over her arms and legs and her forehead instantly swollen. "Chloe!" Sarah shouted at me after regaining consciousness. Her eyes were red, and even at this time she didn't forget to reverse the truth. "I'm not saying I won't take you home in the future. Even if our relationship is good, you can't take my family's car home every day. This is my family's car. Isn't what you did too much?" "I'm too much." I pointed to my nose with a smile, and then I couldn't help but sneer. "I opened the door for you as you asked, didn't I? You didn't dodge in time and hit the door, and I haven't accused you of making a scene yet. Moreover, when can you just talk nonsense? You say this is your family's car? Where's the evidence? Open your eyes and see if you recognize what brand this car is. After wearing clothes for a few days, you really think you're someone?" After saying that, I didn't waste any more words with her, and closed the car door again and let myself drive. Seeing the driver's eyes looking at Sarah crying outside the window with heartache, my face almost sank instantly. "Driver Lee, don't forget who pays your salary. The things that have happened these days, I will tell my dad everything when he comes back from abroad. Think about your son and restrain your overflowing sympathy. Don't sympathize with people who shouldn't be sympathized with." After my words fell, the sympathy on Driver Lee's face was almost instantly retracted. He was originally my dad's driver, but later, because my dad had been dealing with the branch company abroad for many years, so he was assigned to me by my dad. As for his son, he is my dad's assistant, and his wife is the nanny who takes care of my grandmother's daily life in the old house. They are all working in my family. I know why Driver Lee sympathizes with Sarah. After all, Sarah has been trying to establish herself in this family since she was taken home by my mom half a year ago, and she has been pleasing everyone. She often helps the nanny cook and wash vegetables, or helps Driver Lee wash the car and chat, and over time the nanny and driver have taken a liking to her, and have been taking care of her privately because of their sympathy. The sentence I just said was to remind him, don't forget who the real boss is and who they are working for. Since my dad assigned him to me, he should work wholeheartedly for me, not be distracted by people with impure thoughts and false affection. When I got home, the nanny housekeeper Lou immediately came up and took my school bag. Seeing that I came back alone and Sarah was not following me, the smile on housekeeper Lou's face paused, and then she immediately asked, "How did the young lady come back alone? Where's Sarah? Didn't she come back with the young lady?" I didn't answer housekeeper Lou's question, but went straight to the dining room to eat after washing my hands. On the dining table, almost all the dishes were Sarah's favorite. But the braised hairtail I asked her to make yesterday was nowhere to be seen, but Sarah's favorite braised pork ribs were placed in the center of the table. At that moment I was almost furious. But housekeeper Lou seemed to be oblivious to the darker and darker expression on my face, and still talked to me endlessly despite driver Lee's dissuasion. Madam may come home late today. Should the young lady wait for Sarah to come back and eat? Young lady, did you have a quarrel with Sarah again? You are also, why always make trouble with such a good child like Sarah? Old Lee, hurry back to pick up Sarah so that the child won't get lost again in this unfamiliar place like last time. Housekeeper Lou was talking endlessly and it seemed to be a question, but the tone was full of blame. My fingers were tapping on the table, watching housekeeper Lou turn to urge driver Lee to pick up Sarah. Shut up, don't say it. Seeing housekeeper Lou's confused appearance, driver Lee couldn't help but scold her in a low voice. At this time I finally spoke, asking her calmly, Housekeeper Lou, where is the braised hairtail I asked you to make yesterday? Housekeeper Lou's body paused and then she finally realized something, slowly turning her head to explain to me. Well, I went out a bit late today and the hairtail in the vegetable market was sold out, so I didn't make it today. If the young lady wants to eat, it's better to wait until tomorrow. Is there only one vegetable market in our city? I interrupted housekeeper Lou's poor lie in a cold voice. I went out late and the hairtail was sold out. How come the ribs were not sold out? Did it really run out, or did you just forget and didn't want to make it? After speaking, I picked up the plate of mouth-watering braised pork ribs on the table and poured them all into the trash can. I don't lose my temper, and these people in the house don't recognize who is the real master of this house. Housekeeper Lou, if you listen to Sarah so much, then let Sarah pay your salary in the future. I don't want to say it twice. Clean up all these dishes on the table for me. I want to eat hairtail today. If I can't eat it, you can pack up your things and retire in advance. After speaking, I turned and went upstairs. But the moment I turned around, I heard the whispering of housekeeper Lou and driver Lee. What's wrong with the eldest young lady today? Clearly, she didn't care about these things before. After making the call, I was exhausted and lying on the bed. Looking at the ceiling above my head, I rubbed my aching head. Housekeeper Lou was right. If it were the previous me, I would not care about these things. In the previous life, she impersonated my identity, deliberately embarrassed me in public, drove me out of the car, and made me the classmate who loved to take advantage of others and was despised by everyone. I wanted to clarify my identity at the parents' meeting and expose Sarah's lies. But who knew that my mom attended the parents' meeting on behalf of Sarah that day, and announced to everyone that she only had Sarah as her daughter. I cried and questioned my mom why she did this to me, why she didn't recognize me as her own daughter, but she just waved her hand and clarified to everyone. Who is your mom? You are just the daughter of the nanny in my house. Just looking at you pitiful, I funded you, but you still want to fantasize about things you don't deserve. It's a sin. Her words were like a devastating thunderbolt, instantly knocking me into hell. With my mom's favoritism for her, Sarah had no scruples. Not only did she instigate those who flattered her to bully me in school, torturing me almost to depression. I cried and called my dad, telling him all my grievances. My dad, who loved his daughter, rushed back from abroad, but he was killed in a plane crash. My only support, my grandmother, also fell from the stairs and died on the spot when she heard the news of my dad's death. I was still a minor and all the family's property was naturally inherited by my mom. So, after inheriting my dad's company and all the property, my mom immediately adopted Sarah. In order to prevent me from being supported by the old guys on the board of directors after I grew up, they made up a lie that I had schizophrenia and sent me to a mental hospital. Under their orders, I was tortured to death in the mental hospital. It was on my deathbed that I learned a big secret. All the pain I experienced in my previous life flashed before my eyes. I don't want to make useless vows to God. After all, since I can be reborn, my heart is already determined enough. Those who have hurt me, I will let them all pay the price one by one. And those who really love me and care for me, I will protect them and not let them go to the same end as in the previous life. I don't know how long it took, but the door was knocked. Housekeeper Lou was nervous and shouted for me to go downstairs to eat. On the dining table, my favorite braised hairtail was placed in the center. The other dishes on the table have been changed. Basically all are the seafood I usually like to eat. Housekeeper Lou looked at me cautiously as if to please me and called me a young lady. I didn't say a word, didn't even give her a look, just sat down at the dining table and ate with interest. The taste of braised hairtail melted in my mouth, mixed with a bit of the taste of the sea, salty and sweet. I ate it bite by bite, just a dish that I can eat at any time in my daily life, but I used a lifetime to eat it. Just because Sarah is allergic to seafood, so after she was taken in, there was no trace of seafood on the dining table. But why? The owner of this house is not them. The dishes I didn't eat in my previous life, I ate them in this life. So from today, all the regrets I didn't fulfill in my previous life, I will fulfill them one by one. When my mom came back with Sarah, who was bandaged from the hospital, she saw me sitting in front of a table full of seafood, eating heartily. Sarah, who smelled the seafood, almost turned pale and immediately retched, but deliberately covered her mouth and apologized when my mom looked at her. My mom was already angry because I hurt Sarah, and seeing this she was furious, strode forward regardless of me eating, and overturned all the seafood on the table to the ground. Eat. Eat. How dare you eat? You hurt Sarah like this. How can you have the face to eat and dare to eat seafood at home, you selfish animal? Don't you know Sarah is allergic to seafood? Is her seafood allergy anything to do with me? I looked up at my mom's eyes. In the previous life, she always said in front of others that I was of bad character and had a big mistemper, not as clever and sensible as Sarah. But in order to please her, I was low-key everywhere, not fighting or robbing, but still being scolded by her for pretending to be like that and playing tricks. Since no matter how I do is wrong and can't make her satisfied, I might as well let her see what I, the big mistemper, is like when I'm really bad. I aimed at the target, and the half-eaten crab in my mouth was thrown towards Sarah behind her. The accuracy was good and it hit her face, scaring her to scream. But I sneered and said to her with disdain, "She is a poor student who came to our house to beg for food. Why should I, the big miss, accommodate her? She is nothing. I have already regarded it as seeing her when I give her the leftover food." I leaned back in the chair and said it casually, and what I said was the truth. But Sarah seemed to be wronged, as if she had suffered a great injustice, almost with red eyes and crying. But I can still see that under the surface of her grievance, there is almost uncontrollable resentment. How can I have such an uneducated thing? You hurry up and apologize to me. My mom's voice was so sharp that it was about to pierce my eardrum, but I still remained silent, a pair of sharp eyes scanning back and forth between her and Sarah behind her, as if to say, "Am I wrong?" "Forget it, Aunt." Seeing the situation, Sarah, who had been humiliated, stepped forward, pulling my mom's clothes, her eyes red, and said, "Mrs. Wright, even if I am funded by Aunt, I am not destined to be as fortunate as Miss since birth. I am just an outsider in this family, and I only deserve to eat the leftovers." After saying that, Sarah picked up the half-eaten crab from the ground, and it seemed that she had made a great decision in her eyes, regardless of my mom's stop, and put the half-eaten crab into her mouth. I was disgusted and frowned tightly. I have to say that Sarah is ruthless. In order to stand firm in this family and win sympathy by instigating the relationship between me and my mom, she is really using all means. But she made a mistake. My relationship with my mom has never needed to be instigated, because since I can remember, my mom has never been kind to me. In the past, I was also puzzled. How could there be a mother who doesn't love her own child? Until I knew the truth before I died in the previous life, I finally knew the real reason. Sophia, the person I called mother for 17 years, is not my biological mother. Sarah. My mom was almost shocked and quickly took out the crab from Sarah's mouth. Looking at Sarah with tears in her eyes, she hugged her and comforted her. Until the other party calmed down, she finally thought of me, the culprit. "You little bitch. Do you think I dare not deal with you? Look at what you have done to Sarah. I will beat you to death today. I'll see if you dare." Just as my mom's face was ferocious and she raised her hand high to slap me in the face, a loud voice immediately sounded at the entrance. Then I saw my mom, who was furious, shudder, and the palm that was about to fall was paused in the air. With the sound of the cane getting closer and closer, the expression on Sophia's face began to become more and more frightened. "Grandma." I was excited to see the person coming, and bypassed Sophia to run towards her. "Grandma, I miss you so much." I threw myself into my grandmother's arms like a child and acted coquettishly, thinking that in the previous life, the death of my grandmother who loved me the most was indirectly caused by me, and my heart was almost painful enough to bleed, Tears fell down my face. "Oh dear, my Chloe baby, why are you crying? Let grandma have a look at my baby. Have you lost weight? Don't cry baby, grandma is here. Grandma will support you and see who has made our Chloe baby feel wronged." Seeing my tears, my grandmother's eyes were almost full of heartache, and she patted my back gently as she coaxed me when I was a child. Until I stopped crying, she touched my face with a spoiled look, and then pulled me to the side and turned to look at Sophia. Her expression changed instantly. "I didn't expect that when my son is not at home, you have become quite powerful. Today, if it weren't for our Chloe calling and saying she missed me, and I came to see on a whim, I wouldn't know when this family has become yours to be in charge." My grandmother took me to sit in the living room on one side, and seeing her in front of me, Sophia was gritting her teeth on one side, but she was too scared to raise her head. Seeing that she didn't dare to speak, my grandmother snorted coldly, and the cane in her hand slammed heavily on the marble floor, and Sophia trembled visibly. My grandfather passed away when my dad was in his teens, and the huge industry fell into my grandmother's hands. Back then, the group had not achieved today's brilliant results, and my grandmother led the group to transform under pressure when it was most difficult, and her methods and courage were not comparable to ordinary people. After decades of decisiveness in the business, even now that she is older, just a glance is enough to make people tremble. I'll put it here today, I have only one young lady, and there will only be Chloe as the successor in the future. Some people want to play some unscrupulous tricks. It's best to weigh their own weight whether they are qualified to compete with me, an old woman. If I find out again that someone is bullying my Chloe with some unscrupulous tricks, don't blame me for being unkind to that person. After saying that, she took me and stood up and ordered housekeeper Lou behind her. "Pack up, I'm going to stay here for a while. I want to see who dares to make a scene under my eyes." Grandma stayed at home. Just the next day, all the servants in the house except driver Lee were replaced by Grandma. Sophia and Sarah's faces were almost green. After all, my dad is not often at home, and they have finally won over all the servants in the house, but they didn't expect Grandma to appear, and all their efforts were in vain. My mom was angry and wanted to lose her temper, but she didn't dare. Because now she is almost always under Grandma's eyes. Every move and word is inseparable from Grandma's eyes. Sarah is even more miserable. She has been relying on my mom's preference, acting like a bully at home and school. But now my mom is busy with herself and she doesn't dare to come home, hiding outside all day, even afraid to come back. Her identity is awkward and she has finally become close to all the servants in the house. But now the servants who were once taken care of are no longer there, and the new batch of servants have been deliberately trained, and they only listen to my orders at home. Even driver Lee, who used to take care of her, dares not have too much contact with her after being warned by me that day, for fear of making me unhappy. Now Sarah in this house is like a transparent person. She has food and drink, but she has never had the treatment of a big miss like before. However, this is her normal treatment, isn't it? She is just a funded poor student. Why does she think she can enjoy the treatment of a princess? Greedy like Sarah has not thought about changing all this, and she has tried to please and approach Grandma. But her little tricks are not in Grandma's eyes. After half of her living expenses were deducted, Sarah was finally honest and dared not continue to make a scene. It's finally quiet for a while. This should be the most comfortable time I have ever had in my 2 lives. Without these annoying things and people, I can focus on reviewing this month's exam instead of being troubled by these things like in the previous life, and I can't concentrate on reviewing, which led to my first month's exam after this semester, directly from the first in the grade out of the top 10 in the grade. And this time, without any accidents, I still maintain the first place in the grade. After the first month of school, the next thing is the parents' meeting. I didn't expect Sophia to attend my parents' meeting like in the previous life. After all, I also understand how much she doesn't want to admit that I am her daughter. On the day of the parents' meeting, I was arranged by the head teacher at the door to collect parents' signatures and guide parents in. From far away, I heard a commotion getting closer and closer to the door of the class. I heard someone say, "No way. I just saw Sophia and Sarah at the school gate." So, Sarah is really Sophia's daughter? The group's big miss. Must be. I saw Sophia holding Sarah's shoulder, looking very close. It must be a mother and daughter. The noise was mixed with someone's surprised voice and came into my ears. The familiar high heels sound from the other end of the corridor to this end, getting closer and closer and finally stopped in front of me. Glancing, I saw Sophia and Sarah standing in front of me, one with a disdainful face and the other with a proud look. Sarah deliberately looked into the classroom, seeing that the seat I sat in the first row was still empty. A smirk flashed across her face, and she said to me in a voice that only the three of us could hear. "Sorry, sister, Aunt is distressed that I don't have parents here, so she is accompanying me to the parents' meeting. Sister, you won't mind, will you?" "Ah, yes. I don't mind at all." I pushed the signature book in front of the two to them. "Please sign quickly, there are parents waiting behind." There was no embarrassment or distress on my face after all. Sophia is not my biological mother. What she does is her business. It has nothing to do with me. Seeing that I didn't care at all and couldn't make me feel bad, the faces of the two people immediately lost their initial complacency. Sophia even bit her teeth secretly, quickly signed her name and said to me angrily, "You just keep up the act here." Some people always love to glorify themselves. Sophia's appearance immediately attracted the attention of all parents and students in the class. After all, as a movie queen, she naturally has a certain reputation. In the midst of the surrounding compliments and flattery, Sarah's spine was particularly straight. She often cast provocative glances at me, but I just pretended not to see and went straight to my seat. Seeing that the parents' meeting was about to start, some parents were late, and the head teacher walked into the classroom. Seeing Sophia next to Sarah, the head teacher's expression was obviously shocked, and then he asked politely, "Sarah, who is this?" "Hello, teacher, I am Sarah's mother." Just like in the previous life, Sophia announced to the whole class that she was Sarah's mother. She looked at Sarah next to her, her eyes full of a mother's love and doting for her daughter. After introducing her identity, she also sincerely said in front of all the students and parents in the class, "I am often in the crew and her father is busy with business. So we usually have very little time to accompany and take care of her, so I want to ask all the students at school to make more friends with my Sarah, so that everyone can take care of each other and he and I can rest assured." Her attitude was low and her tone was gentle and sincere, just like a mother who was worried about her child, which made people feel moved. "Of course, Sophia, we usually like to play with Sarah. Sarah is no less gentle than Sophia, she is really like Sophia. Sophia, don't worry, we will take good care of Sarah, and we will definitely not let someone bully her." Many people couldn't help but agree and they looked at me with intention. It seemed that they almost wanted to say that the certain person referred to me. After asking about Sophia's identity, the head teacher scanned the class, and finally his gaze fell on me. Seeing that the seat next to me was empty, he frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, "Chloe, where are your parents? Aren't they coming today?" The head teacher's voice was not very loud, but it still allowed people who wanted to hear. I was about to answer, but I heard Sophia's voice coming from the back row. "Chloe, didn't you tell your parents that there is a parents' meeting today? You child, even if you are strong in your daily life, you can't not tell your family about such a big event." "Well, your dad should still be waiting at the school gate and hasn't gone back, I will call him now." After saying that, she took out her mobile phone and was about to dial, and explained to the students and parents who didn't know the situation. "I'm sorry everyone, this child's father is my family's driver, and her mother is the nanny at home. I have been watching this child grow up since she was a child, and she has always had a strong sense of self-esteem. This time she also asked me to attend the parents' meeting on behalf of her parents, but I refused. I think such a big event as the parents' meeting, how can I have the qualifications to replace other people's parents, right, teacher?" Sophia's words were light, but every word was implying that I looked down on my parents' work, and I was a complete white-eyed wolf. As expected, after her words fell, almost everyone looked at me with strange eyes. Some parents couldn't help but mock. Even their own biological parents are not recognized, it's really a white-eyed wolf. If such a daughter is born, it's better to raise a dog. If I were her parents, I would sever the relationship. Just like in the previous life, because of Sophia's words, I was accused by everyone in public and I was almost red-faced and speechless. I rushed to her and questioned why she said that, why she did this to me. Clearly I am her own daughter. But she pushed me away without any mercy and said that I was crazy after being exposed and had mental problems. If at that time I could have known earlier that the woman in front of me was not my biological mother, I would not have made such an impulsive move as in the previous life. "Have you finished talking?" In the midst of everyone's disdain and ridicule, I raised my head indifferently, staring at her without blinking. The eyes were not panicked in the previous life, but only indifferent and full of mockery. Sarah's mother, as a public figure, you should know that your every word and deed will have a great impact on you and others, right? Can you be responsible for everything you just said? Of course. Sophia raised her chin, not taking these words seriously at all. Unfortunately, she is destined to be slapped in the face. I said that what I said is the truth. In the past, I only thought you were pitiful, so I turned a blind eye to you impersonating my family, Sarah. But now, I don't want to indulge you to be vain anymore, and I also want to prove Sarah's identity for my family. She is the only daughter of me, Sophia. Oh, how do I not know that you also have another daughter outside? Sophia's words just fell and a deep voice came from the door. In the moment of hearing the voice, Sophia's expression solidified. She couldn't believe she looked at the door of the classroom, but when she saw the person coming in, her face was almost pale and she almost couldn't stand firm. Husband. Why are you here? At the door of the classroom, my dad and grandma stood with a gloomy face, and I don't know how much of what Sophia said they heard. He was dressed in a suit with a strong momentum, and when he walked into the classroom, the air pressure in the classroom also became lower. There was a parent in the classroom who was just working in Lynn's company, and when he saw my dad, he stood up from the stool and respectfully called "boss" to my dad. My dad nodded to that person and then took my grandma to sit down at my seat. Who are you? Looking at my dad with great momentum, the head teacher also couldn't help but stammer. I am Chloe's father and I am here to attend my daughter's parents' meeting. The plane was a bit late, so I was late. Please forgive me, teacher. My dad's tone was light, but it always gave people an inexplicable pressure. What's going on? Some parents who didn't understand the situation couldn't help but ask. After all, the news that Sophia was the wife of the person in charge of Lynn's company had caused a sensation when they got married at the time. The national newspapers and news reports have been reported for nearly several months, which is known to everyone. In addition, my dad has always accepted interviews from major financial and economic weeklies, and his face often appears in the public's vision in the media, which is also familiar, and it is even more impossible to have someone impersonate or claim it. Plus, Sophia's shout of "husband" when my dad just entered the door. Although the voice was not loud, it was clearly heard by everyone's ears. At this moment, all the parents and students in the class looked back and forth between the two people, and they all wanted to know what was going on. Why is the person in my dad's mouth me? And as his wife, Sophia, said that Sarah is her only daughter. The head teacher seemed a bit nervous and swallowed, and then said it was nothing and started this parents' meeting. Different from the previous lively parents' meeting, this parents' meeting was very tense. My dad and grandma sat in the first row, and the mother and son crossed their arms and frowned lightly, staring at the head teacher on the podium. A parents' meeting was held, and there was a feeling of examining the other party's workability and work report. It made the head teacher, who was originally quite at ease, so nervous that he was sweating profusely and almost crying on the stage. Until the head teacher began to announce the grades of the students in the class and the grade, the atmosphere became more relaxed. I was praised by the head teacher as the first in the grade, and as a representative of excellent students, I shared my usual study habits with all the parents and students in the class. And as the parent of an excellent student, my dad was forced to go on stage. The head teacher asked him to talk about how he usually supervised my study and share some education about me. My dad was silent for a moment and then he showed a rare soft look to me. I am not a qualified father because I am always busy traveling, so since she was a child, I have spent very little time with her. But I am very pleased because my daughter is very excellent. She has grown into a better shape than I expected, and even better than I was as a father. So for my daughter, I want to say sorry to her here today. I'm sorry that I wasn't there when she suffered a lot of grievances, and I'm sorry that I wasn't there when she needed company the most. Facing my dad's apologetic eyes, I couldn't help but shed tears. At this moment, my heart is really complicated. I admire my dad, I understand him, but I also have complaints. I admire that he can manage a company of thousands of people in an orderly manner, and I understand that his neglect of me as a daughter is actually responsible for the thousands of employees and the tens of thousands of families behind the company. But this does not mean that I have no complaints about him in the previous life when I was lost because I couldn't get the motherly love I wanted, and when I envied the students around me who could be picked up and sent home by their parents every day, I always complained why he didn't come back to accompany me, why he was not around when I needed it most. But in the end, all these resentments disappeared when he heard that I was wronged in the previous life, and he boarded the plane that flew back to China in advance and was killed in a crash. Dad, I don't blame you. I held my dad's thick hand. Perhaps in the eyes of every daughter, the father's hand is always thick and warm. He used his thick and warm hands to hold up a piece of sky and a home for me. Many parents at the scene were moved by this scene, and it seemed that everyone had forgotten the small episode brought by Sophia and her daughter just now. After the speech, my dad and I were invited back to our seats, and the head teacher continued to announce the rankings of other students. As the ranking went down, the head teacher's tone became more and more serious, and the atmosphere in the classroom gradually became tense again. Until the last, the teacher read Sarah's name, and she couldn't help but slam the report card on the table. Sarah's mother, right? The head teacher looked at Sophia, his eyes full of disdain and a look that was hard to say. As a head teacher for many years, she has some understanding. Naturally, she can see that Sophia deliberately said these words at the beginning to target me. An adult deliberately targets a child, which is naturally enough to cause her dislike. Sarah's mother, Sarah's grades in this month's exam are the last in the grade, and she alone has dragged down the whole class's performance. You should know that we are a key class in the grade. Since Sarah was temporarily transferred to this class, can you please pay more attention to your child's grades? You parents should also set an example. Don't let your child be like you and focus on some unnecessary things. If she continues to drag down the class's performance in the final exam, then I will report the situation to the principal, and then I'm afraid she will have to change her learning environment. The head teacher's voice was very serious. Sophia's face was originally how arrogant and now it is how embarrassed. Sarah, who was next to her, almost buried her head in the ground, and she didn't dare to raise her head in the face of Sophia's expression that was about to kill her. After all, since she was transferred to this class by pulling relationships, Sophia has spent a lot of money to hire tutors and strengthen classes for her. But her grades are not increasing but decreasing and gradually became so bad. The key point is, facing the teacher's criticism in the previous life, Sophia could still argue with the teacher with a hard scalp. But now my dad and grandma are sitting in the front row, and she is crazy if she dares to defend Sarah. Different from the previous life's high profile, the two people in this life are like rats crossing the street, and they slipped out of the classroom as soon as the parents' meeting was over. I followed my dad and grandma back home. Next, Sophia has to explain to my dad where this big daughter came from. The spacious hall of the villa is now terrifyingly quiet. My dad and grandma are gloomy and no one is taking the initiative to speak. Sarah is scared into a quail, hiding behind Sophia and shivering. Seeing the atmosphere is not right, Sophia forced a smile and began to talk nonsense to my dad. Honey, I know you and Mom are angry with me. I didn't mean to not accompany Chloe to the parents' meeting. Chloe is a big miss. There are so many people who love her and hold her. She is not worried about finding someone to accompany her to the parents' meeting, right? Sarah, on the other hand, is alone in this unfamiliar place and can't find a reliable adult. Since I have funded her, I should be responsible for her, right? So you deliberately slandered my Chloe as the daughter of a nanny and a driver in front of everyone? My grandma was obviously very angry and the cane in her hand almost poked Sophia. Did you think that Chloe and I didn't hear all the words you said just now? Or do you plan to fool me and Chloe's dad as fools? Enough. I feel more and more that all this is meaningless, and now that it has come to this step, Sophia still insists on being confused. Why bother? I know you are not my biological mother. Moreover, you touch your conscience. How have you treated me these years? Only you know. In the previous life, I was sent to a mental hospital by them and suffered a lot. When I was tortured to the point of being on the verge of death, Sophia came to see me for the last time. She told me the truth of all these things, and I learned that she was not my biological mother. My biological mother was my father's white moonlight. At that time she was pregnant with me, and because she was not convenient, the two decided to get married after giving birth to me. But a few days before my mother was about to give birth, Sophia designed to climb my dad's bed, and deliberately found paparazzi to take photos, and sent the photos to my mom, who was waiting for childbirth in the hospital anonymously. My mother was stimulated and gave birth prematurely, and finally died on the operating table after giving birth to me. After my mother died, my dad was very sad. He originally planned to never remarry for a lifetime, but he couldn't resist Sophia, who had a one-night stand with him and unexpectedly got pregnant, and took the opportunity to let people spread the news while my dad was dealing with my mom's funeral. Also because of this matter, the group's stock price was affected. In order to stabilize the group's reputation, my dad was forced to marry Sophia. Of course, the price was that she had to abort the child in her belly and could only have me as the only heir. Sophia married in, and with the resources she became a movie queen in one fell swoop. I was too young at the time and didn't know about these things, and my dad didn't want me to be immersed in the sadness of losing my mother just after birth, so he deliberately concealed it. So since I can remember, I have always thought that Sophia is my biological mother. And in order to stabilize her position, Sophia has been pretending to care about me, but in reality she has never given up on having another child with my dad. But ever since she married in, my dad has been guarding against her. No matter how she tried, she has never had any intimate contact with my dad. Gradually, Sophia couldn't pretend anymore. Finally, when I was 15 years old, my dad went abroad to deal with the establishment of a branch company, and she brought back a girl from the outside, claiming to be a poor student she funded. And that child is not a poor student she funded at all, but her real daughter. It was the child she had with her ex-boyfriend before she climbed into my dad's bed. In order not to be found out, this child has been raised by her mother, and is regarded as the daughter of her sister. Sarah is 2 years older than me, but in order not to arouse suspicion, she changed her age to the same age as me. This is also why Sophia favored her so much, and why she couldn't wait to adopt her after my dad and grandma died in the previous life. Sarah is her biological daughter. When did you know? Sarah's face was full of astonishment and even a bit of fear. But I was still calm. There is no mother who doesn't love her own daughter. I have a father and a grandmother who love me, so I don't believe that my biological mother would not love me as much as they do. After saying that, I slowly stood up and didn't waste any more words with her and went back to my room. The next thing is not something I should worry about. I really want to avenge my mother who was killed by her, but the things Sophia did before were too secretive. If I accuse her rashly with the intelligence of my dad and grandma, they will definitely doubt me. So, some things it's better for my dad to find out personally. Then I can act later. My dad's action was very fast. There was no divorce agreement, but directly sent her to the nominal sanatorium. After all, he once gave her a chance. As long as she was willing to sign the divorce agreement and never appear here with Sarah, then he could let her go. But Sophia was unwilling. She would rather break the jar with my dad, and she would never divorce my dad. Even she contacted my dad's old enemies and wanted to kidnap me. Unfortunately, she was discovered by my dad, and those who wanted to hurt me were all sent in. My dad once asked me about my attitude towards this matter. I pretended to think about it for a moment and then said to him, "Sophia seems to be out of her mind. Dad, you and she have been married for so many years. The priority should be to treat her illness." My words made my dad understand instantly. Divorce will inevitably have an impact on the group. Since Sophia doesn't want to divorce, then just don't divorce. Family scandals should not be publicized. Fabricate a reason for mental illness, and send her to her own sanatorium, which can ensure that the group will not suffer any losses. Sophia was sent to a sanatorium. In order not to give her the opportunity to escape and make trouble again, and to avenge me and my mother, a year after she was put into the sanatorium, I transferred her to a mental hospital abroad and removed her frontal lobe, making her a person who is alive but has no self-awareness. She is living like this, like a fool without personality, living painfully. As for Sarah, I naturally didn't let her go. I also tied her to a foreign country and made her a nurse in the sanatorium, and she can't get out of the sanatorium for a lifetime unless Sophia dies. Isn't she close to Sophia as a mother and daughter? The daughter should take care of her mother for a lifetime. As for me, after this matter, I went to my biological mother's grave with my dad. Looking at the gravestone, the woman who is very similar to me, her gentle eyes seemed to look at me through the photo. I don't know why I shed tears. I think if she were still alive. At this time I must not have experienced the pain before. It would be the happiest child in the world.